How about a little vulnerability today? It's not always easy, but I'm going to give it a shot. When was the last time listening to a piece of music or say a record brought you to tears? Now, I don't necessarily mean crying. Maybe you did, but when was the last time that happened? And was it maybe because it was connected to a special memory? This happened to me recently while I was listening to a record. I welled up and it surprised me. And the album that did it will probably surprise you too, because it certainly did me. Humor me for just a couple of minutes, because there is a backstory to this. Going back many videos, I did one that described why vinyl is important to me. And yes, it's about the sound, and it's also about the whole experience and the routine of the whole thing. But I used this clip to demonstrate what I was talking about.
And if you ever get lonely, you just go to the record store and visit your friends.
Two of my favorite movies of all time are about records and music, and that being one of them. That clip was taken from Almost Famous. The other one is High Fidelity. Both the book and the movie I absolutely love. And the movie High Fidelity was actually remade into a series with Zoe Kravitz, and that's really good too. My joy of vinyl stems from an emotional connection. And yes, it is about ownership too. I talked about that in another video, but it goes deeper than that. As a young teenager, I'd say maybe between the ages of 13 to 16, I spent a lot of time alone. And that was, during a time when I was trying to figure out, who I was and where I fit in with, my peers at school and such. I felt more comfortable with a book or listening to music. I devoured books, and a lot of those books were over my head, and I read them anyway based on recommendations from others or things I kind of read about. One of them being Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. I have no idea at the age of 13 what I was thinking when I read that book. Another one was Big Sur by Jack Kerouac, and also On the Road is another one. But there was one book which made a huge impression on me, and probably because it really wasn't a difficult book to understand, nor did I need a dictionary to get myself through it. And that book was No One Here Gets Out Alive, about Jim Morrison. I think I was 15 when I read that book, and Jim Morrison was larger than life to me at the time. So as a result, I dove into the music of The Doors, bought all of their records, including An American Prayer, which was put out after Jim died, and it's basically just poetry put to music by the rest of the band, the remaining members of the band at the time. But there was one album that I would say I gravitated to more than the rest, and it was this album right here. It was The Doors' Absolutely Live, released in 1970, July of 1970, which was a year before Jim died. And this actually came up recently in the comments section of a video I did on my 5 favorite live albums. And I neglected to mention this one, but Yvonne didn't. Hi, Yvonne. I spent hours listening to this album, and it's the only record that has Celebration of the Lizard in its entirety. It captures the Doors sound, and especially their live sounds, perfectly. There's tension, there's release, there's joy, and there's darkness. And you got to have a little bit of darkness when it's the Doors, all in one document. So as I got older, I fell in love with different bands and different artists at different points in my life. And whenever I went back to the music of the Doors, it was usually to revisit some of my favorite records, like LA Woman is one, Morrison Hotel, and even their very first self-titled record, which is incredible and still gives me the chills when I listen to it. Over the last couple of years, I've been upgrading my system, and I won't get into all of that now because I've done it in quite a few videos over the past few months. But there was one recent upgrade that I talked about which really improved my sound, or improved the sound of my system, to the point where I wanted to go back and listen to some records that I hadn't listened to in years. As I dug into my collection, and it's a big collection, so it's hard to narrow down what to listen to sometimes, but I was looking for records that I loved that I hadn't heard in a long time. And when I came across Absolutely Live, it hit me that I hadn't listened to this record in 40 years. 40 years. How can I be that old? The last time I'd listened to this was 1985. That was the year Back to the Future came out.
Hey, Scott!
So I sat down one night, I poured a glass of scotch, and I listened to Absolutely Live. And 40 years melted away. I was brought all the way back to being a teenager, listening to this album either late at night or after school, trying to find meaning in both the music and the lyrics. The funny thing with music, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but you probably have, but you can remember little nuances about a piece of music or an album, even after decades, that just come right back to you as you're listening. Like, for example, the way Robbie Krieger makes his guitar moan at certain points in the performance, or John Densmore's tapping of the cymbal, or the way he hits the snare at the end of certain songs, and even Ray Manzarek's vocals on Close to You, which happens to not be my favorite song on the album, and that's probably because Jim's not singing it. For an hour and 20 minutes, I sat in my chair, not as somebody who was 56 years old, but as a kid who was 16, not understanding who he was or where his place was in the world. And he had no idea that he would not be listening to this album again for 40 years. A lot has happened since then. I'd really love to tell that kid about it. So yeah, it got to me. It's like Kate Hudson said.
And if you ever get lonely, you just go to the record store and visit your friends.
It's been a really long time since an album caused me to well up. So enough about me now. I want to talk about you for a moment. When was the last time, of course, only if you're comfortable, relaying this, when was the last time you listened to an album or a piece of music that hit you emotionally? I'd love to hear from you. Comment below, hit like and subscribe. And you can also get in touch with me at joyofvinyl.com. I've actually revamped that website, so check it out, because there's also a way to shop there now. So I'm kind of proud of it. So if you have a chance, take a look. And as always, thank you for watching. And until next time, take care of yourself and enjoy your records.